Hello, hello. I'm going to be going live here in just a moment with Michelle Argyris and talking about the latest discoveries and everything, as well as a recent trip to Peru, which was epic and amazing, and can't wait to give you guys kind of an update on what happened there. I just got back from a trip to Egypt where we discovered 2 new pyramids, looks like, and very exciting to have had that happen. I'm going to kind of walk through that a little bit. And hi, everyone. Tell us where you're from. Okay. We've got Michelle on here now. To Michelle, so she should be just about to join. No audio on your part.
Hello.
Hey.
Good morning. Long time no see.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you hear me okay?
I hear you perfect. Can you hear me okay?
I sure can.
I was just coming down from my little dance party in my living room.
You had a dance party in your living room this morning
Yeah,
already.
for one. Hell yeah. Every morning
You
getting it.
you are so bubbly. It's so awesome.
That's how
Hang
I
on a
like to
second.
start my day. Sometimes too, when I'm having a bad day, I get out of my bed, I open my blinds and I'm like, yay! And it just like makes those neural pathways just change immediately. And I'm like, okay, today is going to be a good day. And it usually really helps.
Well, we met. Where did we meet? We met in La Jolla.
That's right. And La Jolla, yeah,
Hmm.
you threw down a really beautiful presentation. And yeah, that was really fascinating. I love that your language, and I always say, like, Robert, your language is geometry. And you said something in the podcast, which for those of you that are listening, Conscious Convos and Donuts, we have a podcast coming out today with Robert and I. And you said, you don't have to understand everything I'm throwing down because geometry is a QR code for the unconscious. And I was like, okay, great. Because sometimes I'm like, oh, what does this mean? And what is that? Wait, what? Where is it? And it's like, it doesn't matter. It's downloading whether you are conscious of it or not. And so for anyone that's like me, who's trying to understand all the mathematics and the science behind everything, we don't really have to know everything, but just
Hmm.
be open to receiving.
Absolutely. You know what? I'm glad that you took it that way because that's the way that I hope everyone takes it. Because, very often people are thinking they go through my book. I know you have a copy of one of my books there, which is
This is Robert's brain, everyone.
and so this is like a book of my artwork. And so
Yeah.
people, they get this book and they're like, I want to understand everything that's in there because there's lots of writing and everything too.
Yep.
And I'm like, don't worry about it.
Receive.
Just look at the pictures and that's enough.
Yep.
It'll just basically absorb into your consciousness with time. All of it is like, it's like a channeling. And it's not like, it is a channeling. And this
Hmm.
channeling lets you bring it in through multiple means. So you don't even need to understand it. You just simply need to absorb it. That's it.
Yeah, yeah. And then it's fun when we start to uncover what the codes mean too. As our awareness expands, we start to realize what these codes are. And one thing I was telling you earlier too, a code that keeps coming through for me over and over and over again is play. And I know you and I talked a lot about love being the opposite of judgment. And I also believe that play is the opposite of judgment. In order to truly feel like you can express and get outside of that confined, rigid box that we're in that judgment, we need more play. And in order to play, we have to feel safe in our bodies in order to allow ourselves to go outside of that box.
Yeah.
And so, my invitation as people are listening is to add more play in your life. Like, where can we find play even in our healing journey when it feels painful? Like, can we play with the pain? When you play with the pain, you're actually moving with it versus against it. So, there's still this like flexibility and movement with it. So, yeah, love this, love it, love the codes coming through. Um, Robert and I just got back from Peru.
Yeah,
We
let's start there. Let's start talking
love.
about Peru. Tell us about that. I mean, first of all, I think your first day there, you lost your iPhone, which was like really kind of. I'm sure if I lost my iPhone somewhere, I'd probably be freaking out, because like it's not exactly easy to replace there. But it turned out to be a giant blessing for you, didn't it?
Honestly, it was the biggest gift I've ever received. Our phones are so connected to our bodies. Not only is it not good for the body to have your phone close to your physical body,
You must have gotten a call or something. Now we can't hear you. Now we can't. We can't hear you. Can you hear me? There we go. Yes, you're
yeah,
back now.
I
You may want to
got my
put your phone. You may want to put your phone on Do Not Disturb. I'm going to do that too.
okay. There you go. Yeah, mine was an Instagram limit. So okay, not only was Peru one of the greatest gifts because I lost my phone, it taught me without having my phone, I had to be so present. And when you're present and you can turn your mind off and you can actually be that human being, not the human doer, and actually like soak in
Yeah.
the mountains and you guys and the conversations we had and the codes that were coming through, like my receiver was so open, and it was such a blessing for my heart. It was such a blessing for my heart with all of you guys. And then don't forget, I lost my phone after I was in the hospital.
Oh, that's right. Oh my God, that's right.
A lifetime purge. I get to Peru in the hospital. I get altitude sickness, some bowel infection from the food. I mean, it was rough. And I remember being in the hospital till 5 a.m. in the morning, and then I was presenting for you guys at 8. And I just remember pulling it together and just knowing and trusting that when I showed up, everything that needed to be there was going to be there. And yeah, it just threw down a ceremony for you guys post
Yeah,
truth.
that was intense. I can't even believe what you went through on that. That was like unbelievable what you ended up having to experience with that. That was
Yeah.
wow.
But I'm grateful. Everything happened the way it was meant to. I
You spent
have,
like 2 days in Peruvian hospital.
I did. Yeah.
I mean,
And
that's right. You arrived, and we had dinner, and then like, and no, I don't think I knew anyone else that got sick, but like you got sick, and and then that with the altitude sickness and everything. I mean, a lot of people experience altitude sickness.
yeah.
It's definitely a thing. It's not something to mess around with. It really is not. I mean, it took a while. I got some degree of altitude sickness as well. I got something I've never had before called altitude edema.
Mm.
So I ended up with like a really swollen leg,
Oh,
which was
yeah.
very strange, right? Because I pulled my hamstring, and when you get any kind of inflammation, you can get this hyper swelling
Yeah.
from altitude.
Well,
So by the end of the time, I could barely walk.
you did so much exercise too. I mean, this extravaganza that we were on was all day, every day, just uncovering, moving, climbing. I mean, we did it all. So, Robert, question
Uh
for
huh.
you. The comments for me have stopped. Can you at least see them? Because I can't see
I
that.
can see them. Yeah, I can see all the
Okay, cool.
comments.
I'll
Yeah,
let you
you know.
I'll let
Yeah,
you
yeah.
chime in there then. Um, but yeah, it's interesting too, because coming to Peru, I had this idea of potentially, doing
Uh huh.
ayahuasca. When in Peru, you do ayahuasca, and I truly feel like I had this natural purge as soon as I got there. And then, a purging of my phone, and just like the universe went like, nope, you don't get a phone. You are here. You're going to soak in every moment. And it was so beautiful, Robert. There were moments where I would look up at the mountains, and I was just in awe. It reminded me again back to the codes of like play. It was just like awe and wonder, like a child. And every time I changed the lens, it was like a whole new mountain, but same mountain, but I was seeing it in a different way. And we had so many beautiful activations you guys were throwing down, and just being able to experience this group, this frequency, this energy, this land. It was a really powerful trip.
Yeah,
But
yeah. So I mean, and we made tons of discoveries, and you weren't there for the entire trip, but like we discovered elephant thrones, which was like signifying the hierophant stage, which was bizarre because I think it's probably not such a surprise. People know that I believe we live in a mental matrix. So therefore, everything that we experience is all about our awareness.
yeah.
And our experiences are informed by our awareness in every sense, right? We can't separate our experience in the world from our observation biases that we
Mm.
have.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's funny because I've sent a video of this when we discovered this elephant throne, which of course it was raining. We got to this place called Chincheru, and there were these megalithic thrones that were carved out. You can see there's places to sit and everything,
Mm.
and it was raining, and so they gave us all ponchos, and the ponchos they gave us all were all
Rainbow.
multicolored ponchos. They were
Yep.
rainbow colored. So it was kind of funny because we're all wearing these rainbow ponchos, which actually wasn't planned at all. It was just part of our theme, which was rainbow body activation, which
Yes.
is a thing in Buddhism, right, where you basically balance all of your chakras, and then with each of those chakras balanced, you have an auric field that becomes rainbow body, and it
Mm-hmm.
also is accompanied by a DNA change and shift. And so here we were, at this place Chinchai, and all of a sudden we're discovering. I walked up because I was the last one to walk up, and everyone had already seen all these elephants. Now, elephants went extinct 12,000 years ago in Peru and in all of South America. So
Mm-hmm.
this is basically telling it, and some of these elephants were so detailed. There's no way that it could have been that they had word of mouth and they described what elephants should look like, and then they made an elephant throne. No, these are people that had seen elephants. So that means that this site is very likely 12,000 or more years old.
Wow.
And this is like an ancient Lemurian location, right?
Mhm.
So I was blown away because we found more than 100 carved elephants. And I sent a picture of it to Matthias Di Stefano, who was in Liechtenstein at the time. And I said, I feel like this is related to the hierophant stage. The hierophant stage is when the throat chakra, at the highest level of throat chakra, converts from the bull, which is how we describe, the apis bull,
Mm-hmm.
and the bull is all about human doing, to it transitions to a white elephant in India. And the white elephant represents human being,
Yeah.
right? It's a new stage of manifestation. It's a new stage of magic and miracles and all of this. And so Matthias immediately writes back, he goes, "You're not going to believe this." And he sent a picture of the whiteboard that he was on. And he had just written on the whiteboard hierophant, because it rhymes with elephant as well. He'd written
Wow.
it before I even sent him the message.
Wow.
And
Wow.
he's like, wow, we're making the hierophant board and council. And he had, my name next to it as well, which was bizarre because here I was in this place of elephant thrones, and the elephant throne is the symbol. The throne is a symbol of the throat chakra, but the elephant throne is a symbol of the hierophant stage specifically of that.
Yep.
And if you're familiar with the tarot cards, the hierophant is the one with the Pope on it, and he's got this beehive crown that's like the shape of a beehive, like the Pope has, with triple crown on top of it, thrice crown, and then the keys that are making the X, like this. These are the same keys as keys of Peter. So this whole stage is represented by rainbow body as well.
Mm-hmm.
And this stage is also represented by a DNA upgrade and the
Mm.
change of your world. So the
Mm-hmm.
world then splits. Your world and the world you're experiencing splits from, this world of judgment, which maybe goes in some other dimension somehow. We've all been hearing about, since Dolores Cannon, this great split. That great split has now happened. And you may not be aware of it, but this is why things have gotten so different since Peru. If you've noticed, the tone and tenor of the world around us, it's really de-escalated, but now the focus is on all these drones. The focus is on all this, UFO stuff, and is there going to be global contact, and what is all this? The elections seem to go pretty quietly, strangely,
You're
right?
right. Yeah, Robert and I found out about the elections while we're in the air on our way back from Peru.
That's right. We're coming back from Peru, and you're like, oh, Trump
It's
won. I
like,
was like, oh,
what?
okay,
Trump. Oh,
wow.
okay. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it was definitely a strange experience for all of us, right? To experience that and to come back, and then we went to Oliente Tambo, and we did. I got this download to do a Merkaba activation on top of Oliente Tambo, which is this epic site, right? That's like the most megalithic site, probably well known in Peru, and something told me at the top of Oliente Tambo to get everyone in a format of making a big circle, but then have a Merkaba inside of it. And so here
Mm-hmm.
we have like 60 people making this full Merkaba with a circle around it. I wish we had like a drone. We tried to fly the drone, but they wouldn't let us fly the drone
Yeah.
because I'd love to get a top view of that. It would have been an epic picture. I've never done this before.
Totally.
And me and Satara gave a prayer in the center, and
Mm.
we did a rainbow body activation. And
Hmm.
while we're doing it, literally at the same time we're doing it, a triple rainbow, I've never seen a triple rainbow in my whole life, shows up
That's right.
on top of the mountain right across from us, which is this
Mhm.
dragon head shaped mountain. And it wasn't even really
You
raining or
guys,
anything. That's the thing.
legit a double rainbow. We were all like this. There's it was magnificent. And that evening when we went for the new moon ceremony, what was that called?
The name of the place they took us, this wasn't planned at all. The name of the place they took us to, which was our local people on the ground there,
Yeah.
it was this big indigenous show that we had that was supposed to be kind of this Lemurian type thing, and it was really cool. The name of the place was the Children of the Rainbow Bridge, and the date that all of this was on was Diwali, which is
Mm.
the celebration of the building of the Rainbow Bridge and the defeat of Ravana by Rama to save Sita.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, we didn't plan any of this stuff. It just all came in. Like, it was like this the entire time. We would talk about, dragonflies. So I mentioned the word dragonfly, and all of a sudden a dragonfly would just show up right where we were. And it would land on this rock that had a pyramid shape carved into it, and right in the center, landed right in the center of the pyramid thing. It's like, and it was exactly Philosopher's Stone pyramid. We were like, what is going on? It
Yeah.
was completely bizarre,
Yeah. I
but it was
wanted
fun. It was so fun.
It was so fun. And we were dancing on the field. It was such a beautiful new moon ceremony. And I wanted to mention too, if there's no belief, we're not going to see. You have to believe something to see it. So a lot of us are actually blocking off codes that come through or noticing these synchronicities because there's this lack of belief. But when we start to believe in something, that's when the mind can open and we can start to actually see what is beyond what we generally see. And so if we're skeptical, then of course we're not going to see anything. We
Yeah, it's
have
like
to open up our
skepticism
hearts.
is the ultimate vibe killer. So you have to open
Vibe
your
killer.
heart.
Totally. Yeah. And the opposite of play, too. Like adding in that play, adding in the love, letting go of judgment, letting go of the confinements that we put on ourselves and on other people. Like, what if we showed up fully ourselves and allowed everyone else to do the same? Like authentically 100%. What would the world look like then?
You know, I say this often, and I really believe it to be the case. It's like there are three types of people in the world now: people that believe in miracles and might experience them,
Mm,
right? People that don't believe in miracles and will never experience them.
mm, yeah.
And that's by the very nature of the fact that you don't believe that they even possible, so you'll never experience it.
Yeah.
And then people that realize and understand that life itself is the miracle and that you are the miracle.
Mm, mm.
I
We
mean,
forget.
it's really that openness and that childlike aspect of belief. I was with my kids, yeah, 2 days
Hmm.
ago, and it was funny because my daughter was kind of acting up. She was taking a bath and everything, and she's 8.5,
Yeah.
and she said something, and she was kind of acting up to Susie, her mother, and she said, I don't really believe in Christmas anymore.
Oh.
It was so
Oh.
sad. It was like this
Oh.
moment, and I'm like,
Did
"Oh, what do you mean?" Because Susie was trying to tell her, "Okay, you better do this, or we're going to tell Tinsel, and Tinsel's going to take away your present rights and all kinds of stuff." Right? The Tinsel
oh.
is like
Oh
this,
no. Oh, oh.
and so Vivian's her name, Vivian Rose. So actually, it's interesting. She was named Vivian, which is living, which means living.
Mm.
Rose, because I've always loved the word rose,
Hmm.
and I love roses. And of course, I'm a Taurus, and Taurus symbol is a rose, one of the
You
symbols of
you
Taurus.
know that rose has the highest frequency of any flower, right?
Yes,
Hmm.
yes, I love them. I absolutely love roses. I have them all over my
Ladies,
office and stuff.
if you're listening, and gentlemen, go get yourself some roses, sprinkle yourself in a sexy bath, and just literally like let that frequency come in. It's beautiful to have that surrounding you.
Absolutely, go
Hmm.
for the roses.
Hmm.
So then, and her last name Grant. So I realized, I'm like, wow, Vivian Rose Grant sounds like living rose granite, which is kind of what the sarcophagus is in the Great Pyramid.
Mm-hmm.
And we named her that well before, I ever went to the pyramid. It was about a year or so before I went to the pyramid for the first time.
Wow.
But
Mm-hmm.
she's in the bathtub and she's like, she's like, Dad, believe in, I don't really believe in Christmas anymore and Santa and all this stuff. I said, why not? She goes, well, because the kids in school, they don't believe it either. It's all made up.
Oh.
And it was like this moment where, wow, it was kind of depressing in a way. I got to be honest because I'm like, well, my daughter's growing up now, and and the fact that she doesn't believe in Santa anymore now because the other kids in school, it made her not believe. It just made me think for a moment how many things in the world are like that.
Mm.
That
Ah.
we give up on magic, we give up on all of it, and at that moment, probably 8 years old is probably the average age, or seven, or
Mm-hmm.
actually, Susie was saying it started last year in second grade. The second graders, the
There's
skeptics
one
showed up, right?
kid that shows up and ruins it for the rest of them.
Yeah, and so then at that moment, kids stop
Oh.
believing in magic until we get older and we finally realize the magic was there all along.
And then we're like, can we have some more of that magic again? Where do we find it? Let's go to Peru and get some magic. Let's go to Egypt, find some more magic.
Isn't that so
Yes.
true? Because that's why I think people love to come on my trips and stuff,
Hmm.
my expeditions, because it's like magic the entire time.
Yes, and it's deconditioning too. Kids are not conditioned. They are still open. They're not like, as we get older, we have so many conditions attached to everything, and being able to like let go of that and then re-allow ourselves to find the beauty and the magic and the purity of so much like sparkles everywhere. They say if you look for glimmers, you'll find them. If you look for triggers, you'll find them. So, what do we choose to do with our lives? How do we want to see the world? And honestly, Robert, you have changed since I've met you. The way my brain works has shifted. Instead of when I'm having a hard time, instead of pointing the finger and blaming it on everyone else around me, I really started to learn how to just self reflect more and be like, what is it within myself right now that is causing what I'm seeing on as a visual representation outside of me? And how can I fix that? And how can I love this part of me more that's obviously having a hard time, instead of pointing the finger? Because by pointing the finger, I'm never going to heal. That's never going to
Yeah.
heal the part of me that wants to be loved, celebrated, seen, honored, all of those things. And so I really, truly, I started to become more accountable for myself when I started to see the you inverse in a different way, which has been really magical for myself and painful sometimes, sitting with the parts of you that you may not love, and learn to love that. Because
Right.
you tell me, I remember this, you're like, if you fear something, you're just going to call in more of it. So become like, love the fear or love these parts of you, so then you can actually start to work with it as opposed to it pushing against you, and then it just keeps repeating and that loop happens.
Fall in love with your experience. That's kind of the whole point of life. How do you end up getting to this stage where you can fall in love with everything? And I think the answer to that is by learning true authenticity. It's
Mm,
when we learn to truly love ourselves, not because we learn to love the good aspects of us. I mean, if you think about what narcissism is, it's loving a subset of who you are. It's not loving the complete self. It's in fact loathing a large aspect of you, and you
mm-hmm.
try to push it out of you, but then it ends up in the world around you,
Yeah.
right? All the judgments then come in, and with those judgments you end up with a life that is surrounded by all those judgments and
Mm-hmm.
pain and difficulty, that
Yeah.
then becomes a real challenge, right, on so many levels, to be able to experience.
Yeah, judgment kills that magic.
It kills the
Judgment is the
vibe.
main, it kills the vibe. Robert calls it the vibe. I'll call it the magic, whatever we want to call it. And, judgment is the main saboteur. It's like the main sabotager that comes into play in our minds. And out of judgment births many different sabotagers, like the perfectionist, the victim, the hyper rational, all these little unconscious, usually, parts of the mind that literally jump into our driver's seat and drive our lives without us even knowing it. And so The first thing is just to start recognizing, bring awareness around what am I judging? And in myself, firstly, because if we're judging other people, we're judging the shit out of ourselves too, and vice versa. And then how can we actually allow more, like less rigidity? That's where play for me, again, has been coming through. More play, more ease, more flexibility in parts of ourselves. You said something I the other day, instead it see perfectionism and seek
Yeah, so
perfectionism. Can you go over
instead
the
of
difference for
seeking
us?
it, right? Instead of
Mhm.
seeking it, just take the K off the end. I mean, I had a friend who went to Hoffman like several years ago, which is this place where you kind of go to relinquish, I guess, to learn some surrender and also to release some trauma that you may have experienced. And so it's one of these places that literally they'll give you a bat and like beat a pillow type of thing.
Yeah.
And it's like intense. It's super intense. And I asked him, I said, "What's the big thing you learned?" And he said, "The thing I learned the most out of this is that I spent my entire life." He's an overachiever type CEO, really great guy, but
Yeah.
I spent my entire life seeking perfection, and then I finally realized that I need to just stop seeking it and just start seeing it.
Mm. I love that. When we seek perfection, it's because we're trying to prove something. What that is, I mean, we can all sit with why, where that came from, but we're proving. So the one thing I want to name is, if we're going at 100%, is that successful? If it's at the cost of your health, your nervous system, and you're pushing, you start to force to be like 100% in, is it worth it? Like, what if we could dial it back to 80%, soften, create flexibility, create a little more room and more space, and still execute? So that way we're still getting our work done. We're still showing up, fully in the world, but also giving ourselves some grace and recreating the idea of what success is supposed to be. Because then we're nurturing that part of us that's needing to prove. And instead, we're actually just serving, and we're able to serve more deeply and also serve ourselves with love and compassion and kindness while doing it. And then we can play and enjoy the process more.
I totally
Enjoy our
agree with
lives.
that. And I completely agree. And I believe that, we all get stuck in these ruts that we don't even realize of our own biases. And
Hmm.
and we need to just lighten the fuck up sometimes.
How do we do that? Should I
Like,
pull a Mish moment here?
yeah.
Or I'll
So
save you, Robert. No Mish moments right now.
like seriously just lighten the fuck
Yeah.
up because there's a great quote that Alan Watts used to say a lot, and I love to listen to Alan Watts,
Hmm.
and the guy was an interesting fellow, like super interesting fellow, and in many ways incredibly enlightened, in some ways also terribly tragic, right? Like he's a storied person, but a great person in our history
Mm.
to kind of turn to for philosophy in particular. And I love his line where he says, "Mankind only suffers because he takes too seriously what the gods made for fun."
Mm.
And that really deeply resonates because I think we all do this. It's like when I finally realized that, you know, suffering and at the basis of suffering is judgment. So judgment is the source of all suffering.
Mm-hmm.
That was like, oh my gosh, so I see to stop judging so much and then I won't suffer so much.
Mm.
Okay, that's kind of an epiphany. But then I realized, whoa, this is the true philosopher's stone. If judgment is the source of all suffering, and suffering is actually the source of enlightenment. So think about this. Suffering becomes the source of enlightenment because it's through the opposites that we learn everything,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I did this post a couple days ago. You guys may have seen it, which was, it's like if you're triggered by abandonment, then what the universe is doing is if someone abandoned you, the universe is calling you to understand, to learn how to accept yourself, self-love, and being alone,
Mm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's through these opposites. So if I'm experiencing betrayal, the universe is calling me to give me the opportunity to learn how to accept, right? Fully accept betrayal and realize that what I'm truly learning is true unconditional love. Because until I've learned how to accept betrayal in my life, I yet have not learned unconditional love.
Mm.
And it's like this with everything. So when you start realizing this opposites mirror, and that you are the co-creator of all of your experiences, then you can lighten up on everything. Because then once you lighten up on everything, then it's like, wait, even the bad stuff that happens to me can transmute instantly into the best thing that ever happened to me.
What if we started to add play to our suffering?
Yes.
What if we actually, like, yeah, added play to our suffering so we can actually get curious and like move with the suffering versus against the suffering, like you said, because then it's just going to keep it alive. So, how can we, yeah, move with it?
What
I've
we
never thought of that
resist will
before.
persist.
Mm-hmm.
So the moment that you're experiencing something you don't like, instead of asking yourself, why is this happening to me? Ask yourself, why did I choose this? What's
Mm.
the reason that my higher self is wanting me to go through this? What am I really trying to learn? And then look at the opposite thing of what you're experiencing and realize that that is what you're here to learn.
I think there's such a great difference in those two. One's a victim mentality. Why is this happening to me? And then saying, no, actually, why did I choose this is so much more empowering because then you can actually start to change that neural pathway of like, okay, why am I choosing this? What else is possible for me? Oh, wow, I don't have to do it this way. I can actually do it a different way. I think people are afraid of the unknown. We get used to doing things the same way because that's how we've survived up until this day and this moment. So trying something new is so scary. But in trying also something new is where we can evolve and where we can actually, open up those neural pathways and see what the possibilities are as well. Oh, I
Yeah,
love our
so
universe. I love this planet. It is so fascinating. Oh,
it's
so
so
fascinating.
fascinating. And all the things that we get so stuck and hung up on, in the
Mm-hmm.
grand scheme of things, you know, it's because we don't understand what the reason behind it is. It's like learning math. If you learn math with no meaning behind it, then it's just information. It doesn't really do anything for anyone, right? Very few people, maybe unless you're like super geeky like me or something. But if you
Little
learn
geeky.
math, yeah, just a little bit, if you learn math with the meaning behind it, so math with meaning becomes divine communication,
Mm,
becomes a language with the source creator.
mm-hmm,
And that makes it so
mm,
special, right? And it's
mm,
like you have this big epiphany. It's like, whoa, this is the source code of the universe. And whereas before it was just lifeless and meaningless, the same is true with suffering. You know, until you realize that suffering is the source of your enlightenment, then you like hate suffering and you resist suffering. So you then experience more and more suffering because you'll continue to attract everything you judge until you stop judging everything you attracted. So if you're always worried about suffering in the world, you're just going to create more suffering for yourself and everyone else.
mm. Damn.
Damn. That's like
Yeah. Are you guys hearing what he's throwing down right now? I wish I could see the comments. I don't know what people are saying, but I'm sure this is
so
like,
yeah, they're all please talk math with David King. Literally turn it all back. I've done this. Alchemy. Alchemy. Yeah, what I'm talking about right now is the Philosopher's Stone.
mm,
It's the true Philosopher's Stone principle. It is. It's when your suffering becomes golden. You know, I've talked about this before. If you take the square root of 2, which is 1.4142, it is the basis of all music. All music and all scales and all light gets separated based on the square root of 2 being 1.4142. If it's not, then the universe ceases to exist. And so Terrence Howard on this is just flat wrong. Because if the square root of 2 was 1, we would not exist. You would not exist. I would not exist. There'd be no light. There'd be no sound. There'd be nothing. There'd be no electricity. There'd be nothing. It's literally the center of a scale of logarithmic expansion. So without that, you can't have anything.
mm,
You'd just be in the light. And maybe in some sense, that's where we come
mm,
from. But it's
mm,
because of the square root of 2 that we can experience this duality experience. And I tend to think of it as 2 is duality, right? We take 1 and divide it into 2 parts. So you can say light and dark. And that separation of the two is created in logarithmicity. So if you take a unison note and then find its doubled octave, right? So 432 hertz goes to 864. And then the middle of the scale, because it's not going to be exactly 864 minus 432 divided by 2, it's not going to give you the value of the middle of the scale. It's logarithmic, right? And so that logarithmic nature takes the middle of the scale to the diminished fifth, which becomes 611 hertz, right? So that 611 hertz is because it's 432 multiplied by the square root of 2, 1.4142. Well, when we make this separation out, you could say that the number 2 is the compression for an infinite value that is the square root of 2, that is its expanded form. It's eternal. It's infinite. There's no end to that number. It goes on forever, the decimal extension. So when you think in those terms, you could say that the essence or the spirit of duality is the square root of 2, the essence of it, because that's the one number that it could multiply by itself to create this compressed form of 2, right? Now, if we
Wow.
look at that, we could say that the square root of 2 and duality is the separation. It's all the difficulty of life. It's the suffering. It's the struggle. It's all of these things that we associate with duality. It's scarcity, right? Lack of resources, not enough love in the world, all these things that come up that we all don't like about living on this earth plane, right? Because we don't maybe understand what the true purpose of it is. Mankind only suffers because he takes too seriously what the gods made for fun. So remember that. So when you take a step back, then you start realizing, wait a minute, if I take the square root of 2 and I add it to the essence of the Trinity, the essence of the Trinity would be the square root of 3, right? The Trinity is what we think of divinity. So when we start thinking that the square root of 2 is just along the pathway of experience in order to get back to divinity, right? So then if we add the square root of 2 plus the square root of 3, it equals approximately pi. So that means that a circle with a line as a diameter of 1 has a circumference that's pi that is approximately the square root of 2 plus the square root of 3. Isn't that beautiful?
Robert, it's you get so childlike when you get into math. It's so
Well,
I
but
love
but
this.
but
It's
but
so
just
great.
bear with me
Guys,
for a
see
second
that
because
spark?
I got this far. So the square root of 2, how much of the circle's 360 degrees is represented by the suffering aspect? So think about it. The suffering plus the divine aspect or the divine essence brings us full circle. Okay. So with the context now of understanding what percent of that circle is represented, the 360 degrees, how many degrees of the circle is the square root of 2, which would be approximately square root of 2, 1.4142, divided by 3.146, which is square root of 2 plus the square root of 3. Guess what it comes out to? And by the way, the symbol for the square root of 2 is the same, almost the same as the symbol for Saturn, which is the alchemical symbol for Saturn, which the symbol of Saturn is representing in metallurgy lead. Lead. It literally looks like a square root of 2. It looks like a box with a 2 inside, and that's Saturn. Okay, which is kind of wild. Again, we're in a mental matrix.
Yeah.
So then you say, okay, so the lead of Saturn, because that is the metal that's represented by Saturn, what does it become? How many degrees of that circle is it? And guess what it is? It comes out to exactly, when in the context and added to the square root of 3, it becomes 161.816 degrees of the circle. And for anyone that knows something about math and the golden number, they'll realize that 1618 and 0.618, so 1.618 and its reciprocal 0.618, are golden numbers. So now we have a double golden number. 161.816 becomes a palindrome of, which is just a reverse number, like an anagram, reverse number of the golden number's reciprocal value. So it's like a double golden number mirror. So the lead of our suffering, when placed in the context and added to coming full circle back to the divine, turns into gold. All of the suffering that you experienced, all of the difficulty and challenge and all the stuff that you thought just sucked, actually is the source of enlightenment. It's through the suffering and the difficulty when you learn how to transmute that and realize that it became the best thing that ever could happen for you. And it was the path that you yourself chose. Nobody victimized you into it.
Yep. Yep.
When you say that you're a victim, you have lost the plot because you don't realize that you chose it all.
Do you think that suffering comes from attachments? Like we were born into a human body that has an ego. The ego needs to attach to something. And therefore, because we attach to something, it's inevitable but to suffer. So we came here then, if this is the case, to suffer so that we can be enlightened.
Yes.
And we all picked our, I believe we've picked our our soul picked this body and this experience before coming. And so if we know this, can we trust ourselves that we chose this for a reason? And can we lean into the experience more, into the suffering more, so that we can enlighten ourselves more for this contract that we created with ourselves before getting here?
Relax. It hurts less.
I need to write that down. Relax, it hurts less. I'm actually writing
I
this
mean, the more
down.
you tense
Oh,
up, the more you resist something, the more pain you're going to experience when you're going through it.
true. When you feel judgment, how does your body feel? Like physically, what happens in your body when you're judging yourself and or when you're judging someone else, right? We're like constricted. This my stomach right now, just thinking of judgment started to restrict. My shoulders kind of go up. I kind of lean over a little bit too. It becomes kind of this like Mr. Burns,
Yeah, totally.
Mr. Burns,
Mr.
like
Burns, right?
total Mr. Burns. And so when you relax, we're going from literal physical body like this to like bringing more space, more flow, more ease into the body, more play. Throwing down that word again, this
Yeah,
idea of
it's like
play.
we all
And
want, it's so different when all of a sudden we release, and that's what you do such a beautiful job of, is teaching people the power of breath work and releasing these things, these tensions that can be held up in our bodies, right?
mm,
If they get stuck in our
yes,
fascia, they get stuck in particular in our solar plexus, and you've taken this practice, this somatic practice, and been able to apply it to people's lives so that they can release these things and start retraining and relearning. We have to unlearn what we have learned.
absolutely.
It's like we
Yeah.
think the suffering here sucks. By the way, suffering without meaning does suck. Suffering without understanding the purpose of the suffering
Mm,
super sucks.
oof,
But as
that's a good
soon
one.
as you understand the purpose of the suffering is your enlightenment and your ascension, then it's like Earth becomes a playground. And you're now in this stage called Leela, which in Hinduism
Let's go.
is the divine game. You're
Mm,
playing the divine
mm,
game, and you can
mm,
fall in love with the game just as it is.
mm.
We don't transcend Earth by hating it, by judging it, by wanting to change it. We don't find self love by looking in the mirror and saying, boy, I'd be so much better if I had skinnier hips, or if I, if I didn't have like these jowls, or whatever it is. We nitpick ourselves
Yeah.
and we nitpick the world. Let it go. Just let it go. Learn to fall in love with it just as it is. There is perfection in the imperfection. See the perfection.
Mm.
Stop seeking it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love many things you just threw down. One, I want to touch on the breath work. I think breath work is such I mean, there's many different tools and modalities we can use, but breathwork's such a wonderful way to tap into the unconscious because when we're in our conscious mind and in our thoughts, we're not in our heart and we're not in our bodies. And so using a practice like that where you can start to release, you don't even have to. Oftentimes, when we feel emotions and sensations in the body, we want to attach a meaning to it, but sometimes we don't need to. It just needs to be released, right? The ego wants to be like, oh, it's this and it's that. And it's like, you know what? Just like let it out, like get that energy, excess energy out, because if you don't, you store it. And then when we store it, we get sick in the body. A lot of people get really ill. We get autoimmune conditions. We have, focus and attention issues, but it's because we're not allowing the flow of our body to happen naturally. We're stuck in this Mr. Burns rigid, thoughts, and not really honoring what's in the body and in the system and what we need. Um, and then you mentioned playground too, which I love. It's the world should be a playground. This is hilarious that we're mentioning this too. I'm creating a new program called She Code, and I had to dial it back. I'm like, this isn't a program. If program feels very rigid, like this, now this, and you're going to get from A to B. This is where we need to go. And it's like, no, can we make it a playground? So I created the she code playground so that we can start to bring that access of play back, dialing it back from the 100 to the 80% so that we can feel good and enjoy our lives while still being in service to the world. And so, yeah, just bringing this idea of play, and it's so interesting how you brought play up right away today, Robert, because it's, of course, synchronicities, and just something I think the world needs to hear more, because we didn't come here to be like, ugh, for a whole lifetime. We came here to play, even with our suffering.
Now, we are in the Christmas season, and I know our viewers are probably wondering what like cheesy Christmas movie could they watch this week? And I was thinking you've probably started a few. So what should everyone be watching this weekend in the context of playing?
In the context of play and
Hmm.
magic and bringing Santa
Yes.
back. Yeah, if you guys want to watch any of them, gosh, Homemade Christmas is one that I did with Travis Nelson. He's a wonderful, wonderful actor, and I had so much fun filming that with him. Record Breaking Christmas is another one. The Christmas Family Reunion. No, Welcome to the Christmas Family Reunion. It's a really long title. That's another one too.
So
And
what we're talking about here, just for if you just joined, these are all the Christmas films that Michelle has starred in. And you're usually like the primary actress, right? You're like the lead role of the love interest, right,
yeah,
of the Christmas story.
the quirky love lead who is same. It's funny because every film it's the same um structure, just different character, different job title, but it's like, it's this equation that works every single time. Like when you get to watch a Christmas movie, you're going to feel good. And even in the suffering, here's a really good example too. In the suffering, you have to have suffering even in a Christmas movie, but there's hope in the suffering,
Yeah.
right? There's this feeling of like it's going to be a better day. So even when she's going through like her trauma or the things that are standing in her way, her obstacles, she's like, it's okay. Tomorrow we're going to do better, and it creates this beautiful hope and faith throughout the through line. And that what makes us feel so good. We're not sitting in the yuck. We're using the yuck to create more hope, more peace, more flow to pull us to the rest of the movie. And then she gets to fall in love and we get a nice little make-out session at the end, which is always my favorite scenes to film.
There you go. There you go. Well, I saw some other good recommendations. Elf.
Yep.
Elf I've watched a bazillion times. So
Grinch.
the Grinch, I saw another one, Christmas Story, another one,
Hmm.
shoot your eye out. What was the other one that I just saw recently? The ones with Tim Allen, all the Santa Claus series, which of course, they're
So
nice and
good.
cheesy, but they all
Home
have the
Alone.
general thing. And I think the point is it embeds in a way exactly what we're talking about. Bring the magic back. Bringing the
Mm.
magic back to your life can sometimes be as simple as a choice. Someone just wrote on here, it's like, this is all good, but leave the mathematics out of it. No, I'm not going to leave the mathematics out of it. Let me tell you something. Mathematicians have always been throughout history the foundational basis of pretty much all of philosophy because applied mathematics is geometry and applied geometry is physics, applied physics is chemistry, applied chemistry is biology, applied biology is psychology, applied psychology is sociology, and applied sociology is philosophy, and applied philosophy is back to mathematics.
Don't
It's a
piss Robert
circle.
off.
Yeah, it's not, but it doesn't piss me off. It just makes me laugh
Yep.
because, right, it's like that's a part of me. That's a reflection that I have, right? There's a part of me and somewhere in my left brain that's like resisting somehow. Yo, dude, chill out, man. Go back to the left side. Go back to the left side of the brain. Stay over here. Stay in the fear. Stay in this, non-flow space, right? Stay in the
Mm-hmm.
masculine only. And, you can't apply meaning to something that has no meaning. Oh,
Mm.
yes, you can. That's what life is. Life,
Yeah.
and if you want to have a life well lived, it doesn't matter how we die. It doesn't matter shit how we die. What matters is how we choose to live. That is what's going to matter. And I can tell you, I've lived with people that didn't believe in miracles, and I've lived with people that do, and I'd much rather be at the party with the people that do.
Mm, yeah.
No, nobody wants to be around the judgmental person. It's not fun, right? It's just not fun. So lighten the fuck up. That's my
Yeah.
Christmas message today.
Aw.
Lighten the fuck up.
Yeah. Yeah. Great.
So,
Beautiful place.
so I did just get back from Egypt.
Yes. Oh gosh, Robert, I wanted to ask you too. I heard that you've discovered some new pyramids too, and I would love to hear more about that when you were in the Giza Plateau. Tell
Yes.
us.
So I've been. You guys might know that I have. I went to. I was in Florence a couple years ago, and I went to the Galileo Museum, and I saw this map called the Fra Mauro map, which was made in 1457.
Mm,
And I immediately, my eye was taken straight to where Egypt was because it's the map of the known world. There was a whole bunch of stuff on there on Tartaria too. You could look it up, which was really interesting for the people that really want to, study about this whole history of the Tartarians. But so this was the map of the known world at around the time of the birth of Leonardo da Vinci. So da Vinci was born in 1452, and this was 1457. So he'd have been 5 years old. Well, I looked at Egypt, and of course, the map, the way it was oriented, was like an aerial view from the Mediterranean. And so you would see Egypt towards the north, right? So imagine you're on top of the Mediterranean, the north is at your back, and the south is in front of you.
mm,
And so I'm looking at the map, and I'm looking for the Nile River. And I see this river called Gihon, which I was like, Gihon River, where's the Nile? And then I followed the same river, and as it got towards Sudan, it said Nilo. Of course, it's an Italian cartographer, so it's written in Italian. So I'm like, Gihon River, that's the name of the river from the Bible that is one of the rivers that goes through the land of Cush and is the place where the four rivers meet in the Garden of Eden. There are four rivers, the Gihon, the Pishon, the Tigris and the Euphrates. Now, the Tigris and Euphrates became the names of the rivers in Mesopotamia because everyone thought that's where the Fertile Crescent was and where the Garden of Eden would have been. I take issue with that because there's no evidence that that is at all the case, like zero evidence. In fact, where we think of as Babylon today would be what I would consider Neo-Babylon. So it kind of like be, New York. When settlers came to the Americas, they settled this place called New York. Well, there was a place in England called York, right? And the Dutch settlers that came there wanted to name it after the cities that they already knew. So it was New Amsterdam originally, is what they called it, that then became New York. It doesn't mean it's the place where all the things happen in history in Amsterdam. No,
mm.
it's a New Amsterdam. So what we have with Nebuchadnezzar was really a Neo-Babylon. Well, I realized on the map as well, I looked where Cairo was on this map of 1457, and instead of saying Cairo, there was no Cairo. The name listed was Babylonia.
Mm.
The original name of Cairo is Babylonia. Interesting. Which
Interesting.
in historical reference was supposed to be guarded by a great lion, a gigantic carved lion. Now, what could that possibly be? They found a small lion in Neo-Babylon that was 5 meters. But wait, there's another one that's like 137 meters, right? And which one is that? Ooh, that is the great, right at the base of the Great Pyramid. Down the causeway, you find the Sphinx. And the Sphinx
Wow.
is that, right? And it's exactly two pyramid heights, right? So it comes out to be in it's rather not in meters, rather, it's 137 and a half long cubits, which is 1.75 feet for each long cubit,
Mm.
right? So, so that would be 240 feet. That's the length of the Sphinx. It's exactly half the Great Pyramid's height, right? If you had a pyramidion on the Great Pyramid.
Mm.
So so basically, you realize that wait a minute, maybe the reference to Babylonia having a lion protecting it in front of it was actually Egypt. The great lion is the Sphinx, right?
Mm.
So I started looking more into this, and I noticed that there were not three pyramids on the Giza Plateau. The Fra Mauro was very detailed cartographer. This guy would have been a nerd of nerds. And so he was drawing all the architecture of all the buildings everywhere with exacting precision. And he had five pyramids on the Giza Plateau. So I've done
Cool.
several posts on this, and I've said, why are there 5 pyramids? And I thought maybe the 2 pyramids that are in Abu Rawash, which have another purpose. There's a whole new thing now that's on ancient civilizations this year on Gaia this season. Like literally, my recent discoveries are all highlighted in ancient Civ, and it's leading up. That's the TV show on Gaia, the main flagship show, and it's all leading up to all the big new discoveries that are all going to be debuted in now February, early February. I just talked to the producer yesterday for Codex season 2. So, and it's going to blow people away. Like literally, it's the big show this year on Gaia, and I'm super freaking
That's
excited.
awesome.
And if you watch this week's Ancient Civ, they introduced the Great Pyramids King's Chamber as a Stargate, a spiritual ascension Stargate. So, what is the purpose of the Great Pyramid? It's to help us to be reminded of our spiritual nature and then learn how to get to the stage where we can access the Stargate. Because we're now going into the stage in fifth dimension where we can access other space time dimensions.
Wow.
We can also access, and this is why now, in the last few weeks, we're seeing all this increased UFO and UAP activity. It's because we're changing. As we change and we raise our frequency, then the things around us, when you change, how you see things, the things you see change. The intraterrestrial beings and the extraterrestrial beings have been here all along. It's us that has not been able to see them. They've been here all along. So now what's happening is we're going into global contact because it's really a U inverse. This is just your subconscious now saying, let's expand the flora and fauna experience to the next level. I've given the analogy before of the grasshopper that lives in a field. It believes the field is its whole universe. Then it dies and comes back as a monkey outside of Rio de Janeiro. And it heard there might be a city, but has never been to the city. But now there's an expansion of flora and fauna. There's more flora and more fauna, animals and plant types and everything in the jungle than there were when he was a grasshopper in a field in Nebraska, right? So then it up levels again and becomes a guy who's never traveled but lives in Alabama. And he doesn't know what it's like to go to Alaska, but he's heard from his friends that went there that it has really blue skies. But until he goes there, he can't actually see what it's like. He doesn't know what it's like to fish for the salmon. Then that person comes back as a woman who's a world traveler, who is an explorer who happens to have a base in Manhattan and has been to almost every country in the world. What's the next level of expansion for the flora and fauna, the species and everything? As consciousness expands, you get more diversification and more complexity because you're able to handle with higher simplicity the solutions to that complexity. And it's as if humanity hit a wall, right? The world's complexity has gotten so great. It's like, wait, did humanity hit the Peter principle, which is we've exceeded our capacity for complexity. We don't have the competency to manage that complexity. Well, until we go into the fifth dimension, yeah, that's what's happening in the world. We can't deal with this increased complexity. So the next stage for us, for those that are able to increase the complexity, is you go into a world experience where now you have extraterrestrials, interterrestrials. You're no longer bounded by the speed of light, which is really just the speed of your perception, which can expand very rapidly. The hard limits that we think we experience are just the belief systems of the matrix of our own beliefs. The only real obstacles in this world are the things that you persistently believe in. So this means scarcity can now be gone out the window, right? This means that energy that has to be basically, under unity, or it always takes as much energy to create more energy. Now you're going to start seeing all kinds of technologies that are already out. I've seen them that can create energy from nothing.
It's so wild. This conversation is so wild.
And our experience with time is also now going to be dramatically altered. We start realizing that time goes backwards at the same time that it's going forwards. And it does that in the sky. We're going forward in procession of equinox. We go from each month to month. Right now, we go from Libra to Scorpio, then Scorpio into Sagittarius. And Sagittarius, and actually in between there's going to be two new ones now, right? So that's Ophiuchus in Scorpio
Yeah,
and
you were telling me about that.
Sagittarius. And
Uh-huh.
then also the 14th constellation in the zodiac is going to be Orion, the exact opposite of this. So 180 days ago, right? Back in May, the week of my birthday, that's the week of Orion.
And everyone's getting pushed,
Yeah, so
right? Because you told
what happens
I'm
is it's
Gemini.
just you
Uh-huh.
just shorten. All that happens is the period for Scorpio and the period of time for Sagittarius just gets shortened by about 5 days of each, and in the middle becomes, wow, that's epic. See,
It's
what's
got
the AI
balloons.
doing
I
here?
don't know. In light of play and celebration.
That's right.
It's
In
all.
the middle becomes what? It becomes Ophiuchus. The same thing is true. Taurus becomes smaller by 5 days approximately, and then you have Gemini that becomes smaller by 5 days. And in that middle section of those 10 days, right, because that's the way it is, you have 36 decan of astrology, each representing approximately 10 days of the calendar. I have a 360-day calendar. And the reason it's 360 is because the male calendar is 365. That's the sun. That's the sun's calendar. But the moon's calendar, the female calendar, is 354 and a half days. And the two together, including leap years, make exactly 720 days, which have an average Zen of 360. So it's like two backbones of DNA going like this, and you have to find the mean value between the two. So this is why the moon calendar has to catch up at the end of the year. That's why we have 5 days extra, right? And it's also represented by Sirius going below the horizon and then coming back above the horizon through resurrection. It's just that we've been ignoring the feminine aspect of the calendar. This is why the Egyptians, as well as the Sumerians, all use a 360-day calendar because they understood the masculine side of the calendar is the sun and the feminine side of the calendar is the moon. Getting back the eye of Horus, which means horology, time, means that we can now start to perceive and understand that time is going forward and backwards at the same time. As we're going forward in procession, we go backwards in precession. It's already happening in the sky. If we got rid of our watches and all we did was looked at the stars, then we would realize that time is a torus that's like a Mobius strip that spins back on itself because it's literally in the stars. As we're going forward from month to month, we're actually going backwards in precession of equinox. This is why we went from the age of Pisces to now being in the age of Aquarius. And yes, for those people that believe, oh, it's sidereal, no, we still have 500 more years. No, that's wrong. Once you realize that you're in your north node, and you have to understand your north node, then your transits and all of your zodiac stuff shifts. It goes from being a tropical relationship on the procession of equinox, which is tropical, then transitions to your placements being sidereal, right? And then now you have all new placements potentially, or some the same. Like I'm at the end of Taurus. So because I'm at the end of Taurus, most of my stuff remains the same.
I'm heading into Taurus. I'm Gemini. You told me that I was
That's
going
right.
into Taurus.
So
Uh-huh.
find out your north
August.
node and understand once you've released your karma and you go into the next stage of your life, because your first half of your life is really tied to everything that happened in your last life, right? And all that stuff that you took with you. So you have to release all of that. Once you find your north node, which mine is in Pisces, then you start aligning to that reality. So I was a south node in Virgo. That's how I ended up a pharmaceutical CEO, because that's a job that a Virgo would do,
Totally.
right? Pisces is a wisdom teacher. So my role now is to learn to accept that that is my role. And I resisted it for a long time. Trust me, I resisted for a long time. So what happens now is I move into my sidereal. So my placements go from being Taurus in the sun. I still remain Taurus. And my moon is in Gemini. And my Mercury, right, is also in Gemini. And my Venus is in Aries. So this creates a certain dynamic. Now, as I move into my North Node solidly and recognize and bring that into my awareness, now my moon becomes Taurus. So I become a double Taurus for the sun and the moon. My Mercury also moves into Taurus. My Venus moves into Pisces. So how I deal with all those different aspects will now change. But what's interesting is my precession moves from tropical, all precession when you move into your north node, moves into, guess what? Sidereal. So it moves from sidereal into tropical. So until that time, when you are in your procession of equinox, which is your month-to-month zodiac, you are in your tropical orientation. Once you realize your north node, you move into your sidereal orientation, right? Which is Vedic. It's the Vedic one. Okay, it's 24 days. It's 24 degrees off, right? That's the difference. And that 24 is the foundational basis of this, the cube octahedron. It's everything coming into divine. It's recognized the prime number pattern is every prime number over 3 is a multiple, when you square it, is a multiple of 24 plus 1, without exception. There's 24 edges on this. This is a cube octahedron, vector equilibrium. It's the foundational basis of time, space, everything. So when you move into that for your procession of equinox, your precession moves from what was Vedic and sidereal into tropical. So we are now solidly into the age of Aquarius. That's the difference. Think of it like a figure 8. The two are always bounded because the universe will always have an equal opposite reaction for every action that exists, without exception. So this is what's happening now, right? That we are going into this new age of new understanding and new awareness. And as we go into this new age, we go into this new field of resonance. That's why Aquarius is this. It's mem. This is mem is the Egyptian word for water, and it looks like this, the hieroglyphic, right? Now we have two of these mems. It's water in resonance. It's also representing the resonant holy water that is the basis of our DNA. The new 24 strand DNA. 24 chakras on each side of the central point of the body. You have a male and you have a female side, and the two are the snakes. Just go like this. So
yeah,
I looked at all of this on this map, and I said, okay, there should be 5 pyramids. And I looked up other maps, and I found a map by a guy named Pocock from 1743 that had a drawing of 5 pyramids as well. I looked at another map from 1755 from a Danish explorer by the name of Norden that had 4 pyramids and had even an aerial view of these 4 pyramids. Wow. So I was like, wait, I got to go and talk to my friends who are the leaders of Giza Plateau. And I met with one of them. He's a fellow named Ashraf Moyi. And I showed him all this. I said, look, these maps show this stuff, but there's only 3 pyramids on Giza. Maybe these other pyramids were destroyed or they're still hidden under the sand. Because you have to understand, remember, when the Sphinx was discovered, at the time of Napoleon, the sand was up to the neck of the Sphinx. So only the head was sticking out. And I found lots of other pictures of stuff from the 14th, 15th, 16th centuries that show all kinds of statues on the Giza Plateau, gigantic statues and everything that have never been found. They have to be there. So I went and met, I was wearing a suit and everything. I went and met with Ashraf and the Giza leadership. And I said, I have a hunch that there's a pyramid under the sand and maybe 2. And I said, I'd like to get permission to go over there and explore it without, unfettered access. And he said, I don't think you'll find anything. It was straight out of a comic book. Straight out of a comic book. And he's like, no, Norden's mistake was he was looking at this angle and he drew this illustration and it shows the 4th pyramid, but really that's the Queen's pyramid, which is one of the 3 satellites. And it's the only one that's got a sharp top, it's got a pyramidion at the top. And so I was like, yeah, but the orientation as a geometric artist, it's not in the right spot, if that's the case. Wow. Because these people were experts in perspective drawing, and they would have known that that's not in the right spot. So then he let me go. He's like, go. He goes, and if you find blocks, he said, if you find blocks, looked at me like this. He's quite a character. He's a great speaker, too. He's like, if you find blocks, we will excavate immediately. Like this. It was so funny. So I was like, okay. He goes, but I don't think you're going to find anything. Yeah. I said, okay, let me give it a shot.
Let's go play. It's time. Let's go.
Let me go play. So literally, he gave me one of the guys from his team who happened to film for me. And he said, send me the video of what you find, because I found a lot of things, and he's been very kind to me, and I've built up relationships of trust with these people for like the last 8 years. And so I said, what will you give me if I find two pyramids? He goes, look, you already have access here, like like practically no one else. And so I thanked him, and I went on my way, and I said, look, I'll send you a text if I find something. So I could have gone back and changed out of my suit, but I was like, no, I'm not going to waste a single moment. I've got permission now. I'm going to go straight. So I went straight there, and I had another friend with me who was also she's actually Jade's roommate in Ibiza, and her name is Eve, and she came along. She was coming to Egypt as well, so we were out looking for these two new pyramids, and what an amazing experience we had. And I put a video on it just a couple days ago, but basically we walked out to exactly where the map suggested and said that there would be two pyramids, and we found blocks, pyramid blocks,
Wow. Whoa. That's
heavily eroded on hillsides that are the shape of pyramids. Literally the only steep zones, the shape of pyramids. Now you got to recognize Egypt has had three pyramids forever. So I asked my friend Muhammad Ibrahim, who's also there, and Muhammad was like, this is a great discovery. Robert's like, wow, he's like blown away. And Muhammad is the guy that hosts the trips with me when we do Egypt on tour, etc. And he's an Egyptologist. And so Muhammad was kind of like, wow, I can't believe, this is here. I said, how could this be that nobody found this before or that looked at these maps and just started to challenge it? He goes, very simple, Robert. He goes, in Egypt, they tell you, you work at Giza for the three pyramids. There's only three pyramids. No one told you that there's four or five. So you don't even believe that it could be possible that there's more to be found. So you live in this paradigm, and you don't even recognize that you have made a self-imposed guardrail. And there were two pyramids hidden under the sand the entire time. To me, I see this as a metaphor for our lives. Recognizing that what we think is possible is limited by our belief system of a construct of what's possible. We live in a world that's like an emergent dream. In my dream, I don't contemplate, why do I have gravity? But there's gravity in my dream. I'm walking around inside my dream. Where are the light photons coming from when I'm staring at the sun in my dream? And I've done that before. There's no light inside my brain. My eyes are closed. Where's this coming from? It's emergent. Have you ever thought about this? And so imagine if I'm a physicist, I'm going to go inside that dream and say, okay, I want to understand the gravity of this dream. It's a freaking dream. Even the gravity is not real. That's why I kind of laugh about people that get stuck on models like convex Earth or concave Earth or freaking flat Earth. I'm going to Antarctica in a few weeks, and I'm going to see if there really is an ice wall.
So cool.
That's right. I'm going in a few weeks. So, and if anyone wants to join, basically, I'm going to do another post on it today. You can basically, still a couple of tickets left, I think, and it's going to be quite an adventure. I've always wanted to go there, not just to meet the penguins, but there's pyramids there. There's all kinds of stuff there. In fact, there might be everything there that is simply just a boundary of our belief system of what's there. You see how everything shifts?
Everything shifts.
It's like in Harry Potter when they start realizing that they've been muggles until a certain point in time, and then they finally come out of being muggles. That's what's up. I can tell you right now, this is the truth. And if you're not experiencing this yet, you either will be very soon or you won't ever. This is already happening to lots of people right now. Wake up. Wake up. Hello. Wakey, wakey. Time to activate. And I can tell you that as soon as you start realizing that the world is not just the three pyramids, it's what you believe it to be. In this life, we don't get what we deserve. We get what we believed. The only obstacles that are real are the ones that we persistently believe. If you believe you're a victim, you will continually be a victim. You will continually be victimized. Victimhood begets more victimhood. world is against me, the world's always going to be against me. The more I resist the suffering and challenge I experience in life, instead of taking it and saying, you know what, why did I choose this? Let me learn from this. Because the
Mhm.
universe is going to increase the intensity of my suffering and
Mhm.
difficulty until I finally learn the principle. And if I'm always resisting betrayal, because I find it entirely reprehensible for anyone to betray anyone or anything, never leave a man down, then I'm just going to experience getting betrayed over and over and over again until I finally wake up one day and say, okay, I accept betrayal. Then I don't need to experience it over and over and over again. I've broken the loop,
Mm.
the karmic loop of my own cycle of choice.
Mhm. Yeah, that karmic loop is real and it shows up in so many ways, especially in our partnerships and relationships. I think oftentimes what happens is in relationship, we, the other person fills a void within you. So we keep them around because it feels good and it feels safe. And then as soon as we let go of one partner or we let each other go, we right away want to latch on to someone new. But if you haven't in within your own self, forget, because it's just different person, different situation, but if you're not letting go what's happening within yourself, then you're going to have the same loop still happen, just different person coming through, same issue. So it's something you have to work on within you.
Yeah, it's like, someone just wrote on here, never get too attached, right? That's so true.
Mm,
I mean, if you think about
yeah.
Egypt, Egypt has postcards. They have images. The iconic image is always the three pyramids. They have to get over the fact now that there's going to be a new landscape and it's going to have five. How attached are they? Now, we would think, but yeah, how much tourism that's going to bring. That's going to be awesome. There's two new pyramids on the Giza Plateau. It changes forever the landscape. But think about all the things. There'll be people that will say, oh man, we're going to have to change all of the collateral materials, everything.
Mm,
Think of the billions of dollars that will have to be spent eventually on fixing the landscape. This is mind boggling,
yeah.
right? But again, this is what happens with the upheaval of our lives. And we start to finally realize that we are the only thing in control in the capacity of our higher self of our experience.
I um I want to dial it back really quickly to when you were talking about perception and how time is going forward and backwards and how we're in it. So something had happened to me just before Peru, actually, and it was right before going to sleep. And no, there was no medicines involved, no mushrooms or anything like that. And I was going to bed. I was not sleeping, and I wasn't fully. I mean, I feel like I was fully awake, but it was maybe in more an in between state. And all of a sudden, I saw millions of eyes, millions of eyes. And I'm like, what is this? And then I saw millions of different women. And I was like, and women of different ages, colors, just everything. And I'm like, what is this? And then I received the information, this is you. And I'm like, what do you mean? This is me? It was like a million different versions of me all at the same time right now in a million different places, but the only one that I'm conscious of that I can know about is this Michelle on this planet that I'm on right now. It's the only one my brain can go as far as. But it was like something had opened up and I saw it. And then I also received, and I'm like, well, where's my mom? And then there was millions of mothers. So there was a million versions of me and million mothers in this one void of space. And I remember being like, oh my God, I've never, other than doing my mushroom journey, been able to access or see something like this. It was not 3D, it was like 20D of like, I just could see so much. And then it was like seeing into the cell, into the cell, into the cell, and then just seeing all these I don't know how to put words to the experience, but when you're talking about perception, it's like, wow, this is one perception, one pair of eyeballs. Imagine the millions of other eyeballs and perceptions that I have as all those other women or versions of me that exist in all these other wherever they are. It's like my brain can't even, it's like, it almost makes me feel nuts thinking about it because I'm like, my brain can't even go that far yet. Like it's overwhelming in my human body to for my brain to expand that much. It feels
Yeah.
almost unsafe. And I'm like, oh, that's a lot. I gotta come back, gotta come back. Oof, okay, back in this body. Phew, you know, it's fascinating.
If you want, if you want to see a world with no wars in it, ask yourself the question: what within you is causing you to experience a world with wars in it? Release the wars within yourself, and the wars on the outside of you will be released.
Yeah.
The more you resist and you fight for something, the more that thing will be fought against. Whatever it is. If you choose the topic of deforestation or saving the whales, the only thing that's going to happen if you start taking on that battle and
Mm-hmm.
fighting for saving the whales, you're going to only create more whales being killed and annihilated.
Mm-hmm.
Your world is
Mm-hmm.
going to eventually be full of whale death.
A perfect example of that is when I moved into my new place, I was like, please may it be quiet. Please may the people around it, can it be peaceful? I want peace. And I was calling in peace. I'm like, I'm going to manifest more peace, more peace, more peace. I don't want loud. I don't want loud. And of course, one neighbor after the next. We have like one neighbor's just always, their kids are always screaming and yelling. And then the other one that just moved in blasts their music till 2 a.m. And I'm like, I did this. This isn't them doing it to me. It was me who did this to myself. How can I start to lean into embracing this noise and embracing and not being afraid of the noise and the like impeding on my space, and actually allow people to just do what they want to do for that peace to actually exist within myself and
You
work
know
with it?
what? It's like this. I remember I was starting to go down the path of non-judgment, and I kind of like set a boundary condition on the non-judgment. And the
Mm,
boundary was, okay, yes, I can agree with non-judgment except for pedophilia. I can agree with non-judgment except for killing babies. And so I held to those things where I kept saying, okay, I can't deal with pedophilia. And then I started noticing, oh, and the other thing was um, transgender, right, for children. So in my world, I said, okay, these are the things that I'm going to stop judgment on, which is virtually everything, except for trying to convince children before they're of age that they need to become a trans person, right? Which is what happens in schools all the time, right?
mhm,
I was also saying, and I'm going to draw the line also at pedophilia. Pedophilia is bad. In no world, universe, context could this ever be good. So it's bad. And then also murdering children, right? Murdering women and children, innocents in a war setting, whatever, also very, very bad. And I don't want that in my world. So I'm going to fight against those three things. Guess what? My world, very quickly, over the course of about 2 or 3 years, when I let go of all the other judgments,
mm,
my world was left all of a sudden every day on the news. It was about pedophilia. It was about murdering women and children. And it was about transgender issues, and teachers basically almost forcing children to get sex changes early on.
mm,
So then I started thinking, wait a minute, man, am I creating this through my judgments? The world around you will become the sum of all of the judgments that you still hold on to, your beliefs. You're creating this reality. Wake up. So for those of you that are out there saying, but wait a minute, what about all the children in Palestine? Yeah, I don't want to see children get killed in Palestine either. But the more I judge it, the more it creates it. You are not separate from your world around you. It's a you inverse. You're creating all of it. Wake up. That is the issue. What we resist will continue to persist. It'll eventually, like you're going to fight deforestation, you're going to end up living in a world full of deforestation. And it'll be never ending. Release it. Let it go. So we discovered two new pyramids. And
mhm.
the two new pyramids, they're right there hidden under the sand. I'm going to do another post on the pictures of it. And you can see the blocks, they have mortar and everything. They're exactly the same weathering style and everything as you see on the satellite pyramids next to Menkaure Pyramid. release your belief systems of what can and cannot be done. It's like one of my favorite scenes from the Star Wars, the first trilogy series, where Luke Skywalker is trying to, he's got the scene begins on Tatooine, and he's got Yoda levitating, and he's got all these big rocks levitating as well. And then all of a sudden, his ship slips into the swamp, and it gets submerged in the swamp. It was on kind of land, and then like goes into this, this wet section, and just the marsh just subsumes it, and, consumes it. And so, all of a sudden, Yoda falls from his levitation, and everything drops because Luke Skywalker was keeping them all in place.
Mm-hmm.
And so Luke runs over to Master Yoda. He says, "What are we going to do? How do I get this out of here?" And he says, "Look, you can do this. If you can do small things, you can do big things. Doesn't matter. You can levitate this thing. And by the way, telepathy and telekinesis are coming next for us. It's already part of this matrix. It's coming in big time.
Mm.
Start looking for it, and you will start experiencing it. We are so much more than this flesh suit."
Yeah.
So he
That is.
goes to Luke Skywalker and he says, "You can lift it out." So Luke starts to lift it out of the swamp. And you see this X-Wing fighter coming up out of the swamp. And then it's like so big, and he starts getting doubt in his own mind. Self-doubt kills more opportunities and more plans, the best laid plans and dreams that any government or any 13 family royal bloodline has ever killed. So stop believing in the obstacles, stop believing in all the theys, and realize that those theys are just you and your belief systems. The conspiracies and everything you believe, you're creating them more and more by putting more belief into them. Just like Luke Skywalker creating his own resistance for being able to pull the X-Wing fighter out of the swamp. So of course the swamp, consumes again the X-Wing fighter because Luke Skywalker gives up. He says, "Master, it's too big. It's impossible." So then, of course, Master Yoda goes over and he just lifts up the X-Wing fighter using his telekinesis powers and puts it on to dry land. And Luke Skywalker's like, "Master Yoda, I don't believe it." And then Yoda looks at him and he says, "And that is why you fail.
Mm.
Because you don't believe it."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even this notion of belief too in psychic mediumship or our inner psychic, everyone is psychic. It's just a matter of cleaning up our auric field and decluttering all the thoughts that are getting in the way of the attunement of our body's intelligence and wisdom. Like you call us the receivers. You had perceiver, receiver, and conceiver. And so just being able to clean up, there are ways to do that, decalcifying the pineal gland and really opening up space within the body so that we can receive information. And that takes belief too. So even when I was in my course learning psychic mediumship with my mentor, Mana, which I think would be fascinating to see both of you chat with each other because you both just have such incredible brains. And there was so much self-doubt in doing the readings because I'm like, there's no way that I'm picking up on three people that have passed for this one person. And when I did the reading on this woman, I was afraid to say the three names because I'm like, what if I'm wrong? This feels out of integrity if I'm naming three people and I'm wrong. And I remember my mentor saying, you could get in the way of someone's healing by not presenting the information that's flowing through. So commit to it. And I remember feeling fear and my self-doubts were coming in the way. I had to move through those. And remember, I'm just a vessel of information, bringing it like a straw of information coming through for somebody else, connecting to a spirit that has passed. And when I said Leroy, Marvin, and I forget the third gentleman's name now, the woman's mouth dropped because it was her brother, her uncle, and her dad. And I
Wow.
was able to, and that's not a probability. I mean, the possibility of me getting one name right out of how many millions of names that there are on just out there is already 0.0000. I mean, you do the math, you're the mathematician, it's very unlikely. But to get three, and then that's where I was like, oh my God, the validation, which is not why we do mediumship, but having these little validations are super helpful because I'm like, okay, wow, I didn't just think this up because you can't see it.
Yeah.
A lot of us need to see things in order to believe it, but you need to believe it in order to see it. right? And so those were really beautiful validations for me in that there's just more to what we think there is. And that was just using psychic mediumship as an example.
Absolutely. We don't realize that as we go into the fifth dimensional experience, we get the new DNA and everything. Along with that, we go to the next level of our sensory perception. So, our sensory perception, we have eyes, right, for sight, ears, nose, right, for smelling and hearing, and taste, our taste buds, right? Our fingers can touch things. And then we have the extrasensory. So, we've got five senses, and then the extrasensory, which would be the pineal gland related and pituitary gland related. Well, guess what? When you move into 5D, that goes from six senses to going to six squared senses. You have 36 senses now. Each one is associated with each of the decan of astrology. Yeah.
After this.
Yeah. So those of you that are feeling the shing right now is like, whoa, what is
Yeah.
that? Yeah, because that's what it is. One of those senses is the tingling, the truth sensor, which is you get this tingle like a shing up your back, and your body is like, yeah, that's the answer.
Yeah, that's my
Right? So
spine.
if you're feeling that right now, go ahead and post it right here. Say, yes, I feel it. I feel it. So basically, we can now move into this whole new realm. And each one of those go into the subtle senses, because the fifth dimension is all about the subtlety, the subtleties, right? It's like being able to see. When I was at Giza Plateau this week, I noticed the pyramids had rainbow as auras around them, like literally rainbows around them, and then a big light shooting straight up into the sky of rainbow light going straight up.
Wow.
All three pyramids that you can see on the Giza Plateau had this huge auric field around them of rainbow. I've never seen this before. It's not the pyramids that were changing, it's me that's changing.
Well, they say 93% of your auric quantum is your thoughts, and only 7% is your words and your actions. So be so mindful of what we're thinking, because that's actually creating most of our reality.
Yeah, it's everything. So for the people that think, oh, I could be more successful, I could live a more fulfilling life, I could do all this stuff if I didn't have the government oppressing me, if I didn't have the 13 bloodlines oppressing me, or if I didn't have, all these people that eat adrenochrome and all this stuff, right? Dude, let me tell you something. 99.99999999999% of all the obstacles in the life that you face are from you.
Yeah.
Let it go, man.
Let it go. Gosh,
Like,
it's so hard sometimes to let it go. We're holding on.
we're holding on,
We're
man.
holding on.
The first thing, we decide who we are by deciding what we're not. We've spent our entire lives, we spent so much time focusing on what we're not in this world, then judging that in the world around us. We forgot to remember who we actually are. You are everything. That's right. You are everything. There's no limits for you. So
Babies know
unlearn what you've learned.
exactly. Babies don't have that conditioning. That's what I was saying earlier. We get conditioned as we become older, and when we're born, we're not conditioned yet. We are so much closer to source and to who we are, and then as we become adults, we get muddied and muddied and muddied. So it's our job to continue to remember who we were before we got here and who we are when we leave. Birth and death is inevitable. That's one thing that's 100%.
You know what? So
You're gonna
someone just wrote on there, but would you let go of all of your money? Yes, and I have many, many, many times.
and that's probably why you keep getting more. And it's
Yes.
been an open flow of money, because money is just a currency, and people make money like the most important currency. But what about love? What about transformation? For me, watching someone transform is the highest, most beautiful currency there is out there, full stop. And so, yeah, I think the more we focus on, oh, I need to get more money, I need to make more money, the less you're going to make.
Yeah. And so, by the way, now you can start to understand how this all works, right? Because if somebody judges somebody as rich and elite, what have they actually just done for themselves? If you take the same thing I just said, what you resist will persist, right? So if somebody judges someone else as an elite and they've got all this money, the only thing they've created for themselves is more lack. Truth bomb. You create your own poverty, nobody else. The more your judgments are oriented around what someone else has that you don't, only creates less for you. Wake up. This is just the way life is. So the moment that you start saying, no, 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 there's abundance for me and there's abundance for everyone, instead of focusing on what someone else has that you don't have. Do you know Harvard Business School have these students, right? At Harvard Business School, they're supposed to be smart. They're supposed to be pretty smart. So they interviewed and they said, look, you choose scenario A or scenario B. Scenario A is you end up with a salary upon graduation that is $210,000, and everyone else has a salary of $200,000, right? So you end up with $210,000, or sorry, you end up with $200,000, and everyone else graduating average gets $210,000. So you're less than the average by $10,000. You're less than the average by 10K. Scenario B is, and all dollars are constant. You end up with a salary of $160,000, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you end up better than the rest of the average of the class by $30,000. So the average class participant graduates with $130,000 salary. You get $160,000, so you get $30,000 more than the rest of the kids graduating from your class from MBA school. How many of you will choose that scenario versus taking $10,000 less than the average, but getting $200,000 versus $160,000?
Mm-hmm.
All dollars are equal.
Mm-hmm.
87% of the students at Harvard Business School chose the scenario where they made more than their classmates, but less in aggregate than they would have in the other.
Interesting.
They chose the 160,000. Why? Because human beings have a tendency to choose comparative economics over absolute economics. It's the nature of mankind to want to compare what they have to somebody else. And this is the nature of our attachments. Let go of the attachment and start experiencing abundance. The more you sit there and say to yourself, oh, this guy's rich and I'm poor and I'm sitting on my ass playing video games, and then just bitching about someone else for what they did or what they didn't do, you're only going to create more lack for you. So,
And a reminder too that the abundance is not like just like we're talking money right now, but that's love too. So despite what situation or circumstance someone might be born into, because that may be an argument here as well, there is the currency of love. And oftentimes, like when I went back home to my hometown, it's very, very poor there. They were so they were filled with so much love and they were the most generous people I've ever met. They were giving me everything they had. And so the currency is also within love. And like I said, transformation. And we can look at it through those lenses as well, that, love is the most powerful, regardless of our situation, who we are, what our title is, where we come from, what we were born into. That's a birthright to have. And that you can call in, whether you even like it or not. You don't even have to call in abundance. Love is there for you always, no
it's
matter
always
what,
there.
whether you fight it or not. Even if you don't believe it at times because life is hard, you have unconditional love, period, full stop, always, forever, before you got here, now, and after you leave.
So, what I want people to do today is to ask yourself, what are the self limiting beliefs and judgments that I do every single day?
I like that.
And write them down. Literally write down all the things. It could be something as small as, oh, I don't like it when I see one person being arrogant in my world. And I see someone, well, you know what's so funny? There's something that we have called sympathetic resonance. So I have these singing bowls here in my
Me
office.
too.
And it just so happens that one of my singing bowls is exactly the resonance frequency of the fire alarm system.
Oh,
So if I ring
wow.
the bell, right, with my singing bowl, it starts to make the bell in the ceiling ring.
Oh, interesting.
It's called sympathetic resonance, right?
Mm-hmm.
But this is a principle of nature. So if I take a bowl that's tuned to the note F and I play it right next to my piano, the F note string is going to resonate in the same octave. And then the other F notes in the other octaves will resonate as well.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll hear the piano start to like play itself. Try it. Try it
I
out.
would.
it's pretty epic.
So,
Yeah, it's
yeah,
pretty
I have
cool.
lots of sets of bowls and gongs. I love
That's
playing
right.
instruments.
So why is this important? Well, because humility perceives humility. Like will always perceive like. Like will always attract like. The
Mm-hmm.
resonance frequency of the same thing will attract the same thing. So
Mm,
if you're living in a world where you're perceiving someone as elite and they have money and you don't, all that you're going to do is reflect more of the thing that you don't have. You're going to create more universal experience for yourself of not having. This is really, really important. Once you finally take responsibility for the world around you, that's when things can dramatically shift. But it's up to you. You have to make the choice. So if someone walks around and says, "Oh, I don't like how arrogant this guy is. What an asshole he is."
mm,
Or someone says, "Oh, my life, I'm surrounded by assholes. Why am I surrounded by assholes?" Well, because you're the asshole.
mm.
And you're just vibrating at the sympathetic resonance of assholes.
Yeah, you can't see you won't see it unless you see it within yourself. It's like my control. When I feel controlled, it's my control meeting someone else's control. Because if I wasn't controlling, I wouldn't be feeling controlled, right?
Yeah. So it's like,
So,
let's be real here. It's like, wait a minute, an eye can't see itself without the aid of a mirror.
mm,
Consciousness can't perceive itself without dividing itself. And it divides it into each of us so that we can experience this together and
mm,
realize that through our relationships, we are adding to this Akashic field of information of emotional states. That
mm,
Akashic field, every one of us is like a blockchain node validator in that matrix of information. And we're all storing up all of our emotional states that are based on what we believe happened to us, not actually what happens to us,
mm.
but what we believe happens to us. And that
Yeah.
makes the one source creator more empathetic for every possible circumstance. So it can love itself more and more and more.
This is
It wants to learn how to love itself more and more and more. And the subjectiveness of emotion requires subjectivity of perceptions. There's not
mm,
any one objective truth. Let that go too.
mm.
Let it
I
go.
think this is really good timing too, as we are coming to a close on this year and using this time to really look at where are my judgments, where are my limited belief systems, and how do I want to be the visionary and the leader going into 2025 with more magic, more play, more space, more flexibility, and bringing in some of those feminine qualities to our very masculine world. And actually, speaking of too, I created a journal. I'll post that after this. I created a journal for 2025. If y'all want to use that, I'll put that in my story. But yeah, start now. Like this is perfect. It's like coming in that period just before we get into this new year. Like let's reflect, let's be honest, let's be authentic, like Robert was tapping into earlier, like the real true authentic you. What do you want that to look like next year? Not the version you think you're meant to be and we put these masks on, but if we unmask ourselves and really get to the root of who we are, well, how do we want to feel going into the next year too is really important. Not just visualizing, oh, I want this amount of money and I want to have this job and all that. Because if you get that, but you don't feel the way you were wanting to and you expected by having that, you're not going to be satisfied. You're going to be in the same loop. So really starting to lean into how do I want to feel in the new year? How do I want to feel in my next relationship? I want to feel safe. I want to feel supported. I want to feel laughter. I want to feel play, and then writing that out into your journaling and into your vision boards and all of that.
A lot of
Um,
people are asking if this is going to be saved. Yes, it will be. It's going to get posted. I always post my lives, and Michelle, she might likely do that as well on her page. But
yes.
the point is, if you're living in a world where you're judging disempowerment for yourself, you will only experience more disempowerment. If you're living in a world of more empowerment and positivity and love coming at you,
Mm,
then you will experience that world over and over and over again. The universe is a magnifier of whatever you feel inside. It's literally a magnification of whatever you're feeling. If you're feeling disempowered, the universe is going to give you experiences of more disempowerment.
mm,
If you're feeling more love, it'll magnify to you back more and more love.
mm.
If you're feeling positive about the future, it's going to magnify more and more vibes back to you of that positivity. This is not fake. This is real. This is a function of sympathetic resonance. It's just you're crossing now into this world outside of you, which is your you inverse. That's just your subconscious mind.
Mm.
So in
Which you inverse, Robert, in the podcast that I just posted, if you guys want to see, it's in our stories. He talks a lot about the you inverse. If you want to hear more about that, just tune
yes,
in.
that's what's happening really. It's not figurative, someone just wrote, but it's not really what's happening. It's exactly what's happening. You are creating your universe moment by moment. You are the creator of it because you don't experience the universe as it is. You experience it as you are. You and I could both be sitting in the exact same experience and have two entirely different experiences because your conditioning biases and your belief systems and your self-limiting narratives are going to determine what you experience in that matrix. And the one needs all that information. It needs it all
It would,
because it wants to be able to have empathy for every possible circumstance.
yeah. Yeah, we would literally have to switch bodies and put ourselves into each other's body to have the experience that you're in the what you're perceiving. That's the only way to, like, you could possibly do it. Otherwise, I think the reason why people want to be, it's not that they want to be right, they think they're right, but they are based on their own perceiving of the world. But the thing is, everyone perceives the world differently. So your right doesn't mean it's somebody else's right. Therefore, if we're going to keep pointing fingers on who's right, nobody's ever going to win. The only solution to that
So,
is love. It's the only
look,
solution.
if you're surrounded in a world by assholes, you're the asshole. If you're surrounded in a world by arrogant people, you're arrogant. If you're surrounded by people that are egocentric, you're the egocentric one. If you believe that everything in the world is divine and beautiful, and you're the only part of it that's not, because you're not worthy, guess what? That's egoic. If you finally realize that the world around you is divine and beautiful and wonderful and perfect just as it is, and you are still judging yourself negatively, that is your ego talking. Ego is just separation. And the ego is necessary. You know, a lot of people think, oh, I got to get rid of my ego because I'm going to go in the path of enlightenment. And so I'm going to change my name to one divine, or I'm going to become so and so light, or so and so this or that. No. The purpose of this life is to realize that judgment is the source of all suffering, but suffering is the source of all enlightenment. The purpose of this life is to realize that every experience you have can be transmuted by your perceptions into the most beautiful experience ever. The choice is yours. You've already been making the choice. And what we experience in this world, we think that we're making choices. But even the choices we make here in this world, your higher self already knew you were going to make that choice. So in essence, it's a choiceless choice.
And
Everything is predestined.
I want to mention too the softening and the grace of when you recognize the inner, let's call it, like Robert said, the inner asshole, noticing assholes. It's, don't judge that. Like, try to find grace and forgiveness for that part of you, because that's the quickest way to heal that part of you and to find safety. I think safety is a really big topic too. Maybe we don't feel safe, and so finding that within our body to feel safe enough to no longer, identify as the asshole. Maybe that's just like a protective mechanism we've held that keeps us safe thus far. And so letting go of that neural pathway, creating a new one, and then seeing what is possible, that takes, it's not something that can just be done sometimes in one quick zip, zap. Sometimes it takes time and baby sips to be like, am I safe if I try something new? Ooh, this feels like an edge. Hold on, let me dial it back. Okay, and this is coming from my trauma-informed lens. When we go to dive into our trauma, it's just like giving little bits of space at a time so that we can feel safe in trying something different than we've been doing up to this point.
Well, what's the definition of insanity, right? It's doing things the same way and expecting a different result. Someone just wrote on here, yeah, but Jesus did all these things and he was still killed by assholes. This is, again, us thinking like we know better. Why did Jesus want to go through the suffering he went through? He chose it all, just like you were choosing it all. Every experience you have, you at some level have chosen all of it in your higher self capacity. You've chosen it all because you want to learn certain principles. Jesus wanted to learn absolute unconditional love. So what did he have to experience? absolute
Right.
betrayal. He
Mm.
wanted to learn that crucible. That's why he was in bliss on the cross. What happens to us is not what actually happens to us. It's what we believe happens to us. Now, I'm going to Antarctica, and the guy that's co-hosting this trip with me is Wim Hof. And Wim Hof is famous for like doing these long, long ice baths, right? So I
Mm.
guess I'm probably going to end up in an ice bath and learn how
The
to do it
best.
for like an hour or something. It's
It's
like,
great.
that's going to be brutal. I know it's going to be
You got
brutal,
it. You're fine.
but I also know that what this is actually doing is it's deconditioning and helping my brain unlearn what it's learned. So I've already learned that I can take a very cold shower and trick myself and believe that it's hot and feel like the water is searing hot. The same is true with all of our suffering.
Mm.
If I came to Earth and I wanted to be in this world a mountain climber, I'm not going to be happy and satisfied climbing the hill behind my house. I'm going to want to climb Mount Everest or El Capitan because I know that that's going to get me the biggest return energetically. I'm going to learn the most from it. So when we start thinking in that context, what one person chooses as their mechanism of suffering is not what another person will choose as their mechanism of suffering. Let them choose it. And so it's our job, we think, to make judgments on how people should suffer and how they shouldn't suffer and what they shouldn't like. Why would someone choose to starve? If that's their soul's journey, if that's their path, that's their path. If I knew that this life was a matrix and death wasn't real, after like dying, making love to the love of my life in the middle of the sex act, I might say that's a little boring. I might actually want to try death by fiery cataclysm. I might actually want to try, a James Bondian kind of villain explosion or something. I'm going to try every possible way to see what it's like to die because I want to experience all of these different ways. That's what the one is doing through our unique eyes of perception. We are all observing the one. We are the one observing itself through our unique eyes of perception. So the value of each one of us is irrevocable. The value of us is to simply be our unique selves. It is to be absolutely authentic and to say that I'm all about love and light and not know my darkness. I'm not afraid of people that have darkness because everybody does. I'm only afraid of people that believe they have no freaking darkness.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Once you know your darkness and have learned to accept it and can embrace it as
Mm.
just part of your uniqueness, that's when you become a superhero.
Mm-hmm.
That's when you start to realize you've turned into a sage because that's the moment. If you notice, we have all these movies where America's preoccupation, the world's preoccupation is with superheroes because we all have a affiliation bias towards being a hero. Even the villain thinks he's a hero. I've never seen a villain that didn't think he was a hero.
Mm-mm.
So think about that for a moment. It's just the villain is usually someone who believes he has no darkness so much so that he does the darkest shit on earth.
Mm. You know, when you watch a Disney movie and there's the villain, there's the prince, there's the princess, the reason why we resonate with every character is because we inside of ourselves have a Disney princess, we have an inner prince, we have our inner Ursula, our little mermaid. You know, we have all those parts of us. They exist in our bodies. And a lot of us don't want to admit that we have an inner Ursula and that she is super there. And the more we press her down, the more like she comes up. And this can be in very unconscious ways. It's not even ways in which we know. And so now when I watch Disney movies, I just see it different. I'm like, oh, wow, these are just like different parts that exist within me. And that's how I can recognize them and why I understand
We
them.
think that we have to have a villain to define ourselves. In essence, the hero ends where the villain begins, and the villain, ends where the hero begins.
Mm-hmm.
That's because we think that light and dark are two separate things. They're not actually. Dark is not the absence of light. Get that out of your mind. It's not from a physics standpoint. It's not in reality in any way, shape, or form. And remember, the photons that I'm perceiving right now in the room around me are not actually here, right? Because inside my brain, it's a dark place. I have a sensor at my retinal receptors that are picking up the information, sending it from my right eye to my left occipital lobe, and my left eye to my right occipital lobe through the optic nerve, through the optic chiasm. By the time it gets to the back of my brain, where my seat for vision is inside my brain, there's no light in there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's the same as a dream. This is why I don't bother with physics that much anymore, because I realize it's like, wait, spending a lot of time trying to understand the stuff of the physics of the world around us when it's an emergent dream is like trying to understand the physics of a dream. It's useless.
Interesting. So interesting. All these topics.
Totally
This is like what lights me
useless.
up. This lights me up because these are the conversations. Like, we don't even know what is right or wrong. We can just give our perceptions of what we feel is our reality as best as we can and try to use sounds coming out of our mouth to explain them. But
I have
just
physicist friends that I'm literally now, I just wrote a paper. If you want to understand more about this, go to my website, Robert Edward Grant. I wrote an academic style paper, which is basically titled that, it's a novel theory of everything. And it compares and contrasted. Some of these are my friends, Eric Weinstein, geometric unity, right? Stephen Wolfram's, thesis also on geometric unification. All of these things get compared and contrast. Nick Bostrom and the simulation hypothesis. And I present the world and our universe experience, our universal experience, as a spiritual life, social spiritual life simulation that is derived through blockchain, where every one of us is a node validator in a social experiment. And the purpose of all of it, to learn how to love and how to be loved. And all of it gets collected as information so that the one becomes more and more aware of itself and more in love with itself. Because it realizes that death is the precursor to life. It's a necessary part of it. Every aspect of duality, we try to avoid all the negative things. It makes possible all the things that we love and like.
it's true.
So God himself, the universal one, has to learn how to not feel shame and guilt for all of the operations that it has to go through to create this beautiful story of life. That's the most beautiful thing when we finally recognize it. That's the purpose of this, to learn how to love and be loved. And all of the rest of it is just part of the stage play. And we go to the plays and we see Phantom of the Opera and we fall in love with the person who gets the biggest applause at the end is the Phantom who murdered people and did all kinds of crazy stuff in the show. He's just acting out a part. We all have been just acting out parts of our lives. That's it. But it's now time to wake up and realize that you have an inner demigod. You have an inner superhero that now has expanded sensory capabilities and expanded abilities, because we're now moved into the split. We're in the fifth dimensional experience, many of us already. The only thing that limits you now is your persistent beliefs of what our limitations that you experience are. These include the speed of light, the boundary conditions, which I believe have only been the speed of perception. Photons don't travel. No physicist can prove to me that photons travel at all. They don't. The wave perturbation travels. The energetic wave does. It's just like being in a stadium for a football game. You go up and you go down when the wave travels through you. You're the photon. Same thing with waves of water. The molecules of water don't move when there's an earthquake and a tidal wave comes and then comes all the way across. The wave perturbation travels across the Pacific and ends up in California. We don't have the molecules of water from Japan. They stayed in Japan. All that happened was the wave transited through it. So that means we have cubic space-time segments that get enlightened and turn off. They have on excitation, off excitation. That means that my hand moving around right here is not even real. It's recreating frame by frame, right? It's probably at some very, very high frame repetition rate. Like, now the cameras are 120. And every time I go like this, nothing here is solid. It's 99.9999999% space. This is all an illusion. We live in an illusion. It's emergent, just like a dream. But just like in a dream, we feel it's all real. But in a dream, you can also decide, wait, I'm in a dream. And if you've ever done this, it's called lucid dreaming. You can actually fly in that dream.
I fly in dreams all the time. I swear I'm a bird in another life, and I'm going to be a bird in a couple more lifetimes, or I'm a bird right now in some other lifetime flying around somewhere, because it's like it is my superpower. Every time it's like I can't, I'm at that moment of like I can't move and I'm trying to get somewhere and I can't, but I can fly. And then when I fly, I can fly above the pain, above the fear. And I can see it from a different perspective and I feel safe up there. It's so
Yeah.
interesting. Where,
So the thing is, again, ask yourself the question going into 2025, what are the self-limiting beliefs? What are the things that I need to unlearn
mm,
going into 2025 that I'm just going to leave as baggage on the side of the road?
yeah.
I had this French mentor once who was the CEO of a company I was working for, and my career, I felt like it wasn't going fast enough. So I went to him and I said, I was president of the European operation of the
Mm,
company. I was 29 years old.
mm,
I had like $250 million operation under my responsibility at 29. And
wow.
I said, and I was getting promoted to come back to become executive vice president at 29 years old, again, for a very large, business
Mm,
globally. And
mm-hmm.
I told him I don't feel like my career is going fast enough. And he said, Robert, and he was French, and he goes, Robert, it is like you are walking through the desert.
That's a
Right.
great accent, by the
Tu
way.
parles français aussi, hein?
Ouais, je parle
Ouais,
français
ouais, je
aussi, ouais.
sais, je connais. So,
Yeah.
so basically, he says, it's like you are walking through the desert, and it's a very hot day. It's Death Valley. You're walking through Death Valley, and you're carrying lots of baggage.
Mm,
Heavy baggage, luggage. You brought it from the plane and you're carrying it on the street and you're trying to hiking. There are cars going by. Why don't you leave the baggage on the side of the road? I'll never forget that moment because he didn't answer the question I asked him, which was,
mm,
my career is stagnating. I'm not moving fast enough. And
offload.
leave the baggage.
Oh,
Let
that's
go of your
great.
self-limiting beliefs. Let go of the things that you tell yourself. It's the negative narratives that you tell
Mm,
yourself that screw up
mm,
your best laid plans and dreams.
yeah.
That informs, those belief systems inform the gravity of your dream. And I'm not saying this so that somebody is going to go jump off a building and say, oh, there's no gravity, right? Yes. If you literally could get to a stage, faith can move mountains. Jesus taught this. He was a monk. I went to meet the Dalai Lama. I taught the Dalai Lama prime number math. After I published a paper, I got an invitation from the Vatican to teach the cardinals and an invitation from the Dalai Lama to teach him mathematics of prime numbers. And I did.
Mm,
And I spent a full day with Dalai Lama. He's only done this 3 times. He invited me to stay for lunch. I was there with Nassim Haramein, other physicists, and people that I brought that I knew wanted to meet him. And he's very smart. And everyone's probably now going, oh, but look, he sucked the tongue of that guy. It's like, if you know the Dalai Lama, he's a complete jokester.
mm,
Let it go too, man. Let
mm-hmm.
it go. He's a complete jokester. Was it inappropriate? Was it thoughtless? Yes. Let it the fuck go. My goodness. This is a man who has done so many amazing things in his lifetime. So he sits there and he invites us to stay for lunch. And so we talk with him for hours on hours. And I got to teach him math. And he said to me something I'll never forget. He looked at a glass of water. He said, do you believe that glass of water is conscious? And I said, yes. He says, why conscious? I said, because it has memory. Water has memory. And it's been proven scientifically to have memory. And then he looked at me and he said, I feel you are going to prove the existence of God through mathematics.
That's cool.
And that moment, when the Dalai Lama says something like that to you, and his version of God is not some separate man, it's the entire universe is divine. The entire universe, that means you too. We are all divisions of the universal one. The only thing that limits us back, the heaven and hell that we could experience either way, is determined by our own belief system. Nothing more and nothing less.
Mm,
There's no they. There is no they. So let go of the they, let go of the disempowerment, let go of the things that you think are holding you back, and see how you can actually fly. And I don't mean that in reality, because maybe one day you'll get to the point where you can actually believe that you could fly and transcend above gravity, just like in a lucid dream you can. And I've done that. I remember I was in a dream once and I was swimming outside of Okinawa, and I had like 5 friends with me. And all of a sudden I realized, wait, I'm dreaming. You can fly. And that moment in my dream that I believed I could fly, all of a sudden I lifted out of the water and I was about 5 or 6 feet above the water looking down at everyone. And they're all going, dude, what's going on, man? You're flying. I'm like, yeah, I know, because I'm in a dream
Mm.
and this isn't real. What I'm telling you now is that none of this is. The only things that become real are the belief systems that you continue to hold on to and be attached to.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we need to rid ourselves of attachment. Those attachments inform beliefs that become self-limiting.
Mm-hmm. That's why I love the word delusional. People have a negative connotation to delusional. And to me, if you're delusional, you have an unwavering belief in yourself that you can do something despite everyone or anyone that says that you can't. Someone's doing it. Someone became the thing that you're wanting to be. It's right there. There's a belief within you,
So
right?
someone just wrote on here, so then why can't we fly? I didn't say that we
Maybe one
couldn't.
day maybe one day we will. I mean, we have airplanes for now.
Every single
We're
thing that
finding
we do
ways.
today, like people thought that running less than a 4 minute mile was impossible. You know, there was a very, very difficult wall to penetrate through to break the 4 minute mile. Now kids in high school do it. What happened? The belief system changed. It's
Yep.
not that all of a sudden we became more superior physically.
Mhm.
No, what we believed was possible, the boundary condition, the goalpost moved in our beliefs.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. And even the reason I'm even here in the US, it took a lot of belief because at the time when I was in my acting career, I didn't have enough credits for them to be like, "Oh yeah, come on in." I'm like, "I don't care what anyone tells me. Who do I have to talk to? What lawyer do I have to speak to? What do they need from me?" I believed I already saw myself in the US. So for me, it wasn't a matter of whether they were going to say yes or no. It was like, when, how soon can I start? And so, and there, of course, there was chances that the officer said no when they saw my case, or there wasn't enough credits, but I didn't accept that. For me, it was, I'm already there. I knew I was following the route in which I was placed upon. I felt that with every cell in my body. And then, funny enough, the case was the fastest case that law firm had ever put through. And it's not because I had more credits than other actors. And it's not because I'm cooler or more talented or anything. It was just this energy I had of just, there was, that was that's what's playing out. It's already playing out. I'm just like a character going through the motions, getting to the place where I know I'm going to be. And that's what happened. And that took the word delusion, if some people want to call it that, but just this unwavering belief that I know where I'm going. And therefore, because of that, I was able to come here. I was able to audition. I was able to have some really beautiful projects. And, had I not believed in myself, actually, I want to throw down one quick story too. When I first started acting, I was so excited. I met with one of the top agents in Toronto, and she had to bring a scene, a monologue, and I did it. And then when I was done, I looked at her and I smiled, and I was like, waiting for her to give me all the compliments. I just was very confident kid, right? Very confident. And she goes, "Oh, honey." She's like, "Yeah, you're up against people who are auditioning for some like, TV shows and movies. Like, I think you'd be good for SOC commercials for now." And for anyone who
Like
doesn't know what
you,
SOC is, it means silent on camera commercial. And I was like,
it's like the opposite of like you have a face for radio.
yeah, yeah. Like, and I stopped for a second and I'm like, instead of that crushing my dream, because it could have for many children, someone's throwing something down like that just crushes their belief system. I could have just stopped acting and not had all the things that I got to have afterwards. But instead of using that, it fueled me to show her, here's my, I'm going to prove you wrong, internal core conflict I have that plays out in many different ways in my life. But that was one of those moments like, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm amazing and this is going to work, right? And so, sure enough, the next month, I had an agent who was from another top agency actually seek me out, which was like, how did he even find me? This is so interesting because I really was nobody. And he asked me to come into his office and we connected. And within the same month, I landed my first leading role in a movie. First leading role in a movie, not a little part, like the leading role in the movie, because in my mind, I was the leading role already. I wanted it, like, I already saw it.
The
And
key
so
to
I was like,
manifestation is to do exactly what you just described. I already saw it. I was already that person. Match the vibration of the thing that you want, and you will attract that thing.
yes. And for everyone listening right now, as we're getting into 2025, use this momentum, this frequency we're throwing down, use that for yourself. Like, how not just do you want your 2025 to look, how do you want it to feel? How does it feel already being in the thing that you see for
And
yourself
feel the
as if it's already
gratitude for
happening?
it too. Feel the gratitude, imprint it with your emotional state of how you feel when it's already happened.
And that plus it doesn't come from ego. So if while you're feeling it, you're feeling like an egotistical version of it, that one's got to go. Bring in the
Did you
love.
just say
Feel yourself in.
egotistical? Oh,
No, ego.
egotistical.
Maybe my French came through. It does sometimes. I don't know if that would be like a French way of saying it. But yeah, just really feeling into already having it, but feeling it through the lens of love and not the ego. And already like celebrating, like start that celebration again, bringing it back to play. We were talking about play a lot throughout this, like add play in. And for any ladies that are listening right now, I have a beautiful playground I'm throwing down in January. It's called She Code, and all the codes of play are just downloading like crazy. And so if you're interested, hit up my DMs as well. I have it in my stories. If this is something you're calling in, jump on. Let's go. Let's
So
bring
I'll
in.
finish with this one
Yes.
thing, okay? I
Yeah.
spent my whole life, believing that seeing is believing.
Mm.
I'll believe it when I see it. Well, you're going to be waiting a long time to see things then happening that you'd want to have happen because you think that you're right, because it's easy to get this I'm right bias, right?
Yeah.
Enlightenment is when you choose to love instead of be right. Remember that. Enlightenment is choosing love over being right.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. So,
Always. And
so
before you go, Robert, I wanted to
just wait,
ask.
wait, let me finish. Let me
Okay, okay,
finish.
okay.
So basically, this believing is seeing is actually the truth. Once that you start the belief system, and that is the precursor to the actually seeing it, you become the resonance frequency of the thing that you want to achieve and see and become. Be
Mm-hmm.
the change you want to see in the world. That's why this works. And you will then start seeing the world around you transform. Because remember, when you change how you see things, the things that you will see change. Everything will change. And it's not just your present and your future that will change, but even your past will change. Because the way you will look at what happened to you in the past will be releasing all the negative trauma of the past and realizing that this was all part of this divine path to get me to this realization right here, right now. And it was perfect just how it was. And I chose it all. You changed history because now all the things that you thought were disempowering about the past now became empowering
Mm-hmm.
because you changed the context of why you experienced it. It's math with meaning. It's suffering with meaning and understanding of what the purpose of it is. It becomes full circle. It creates pi, the closure of the circle. So this is the thing that I hope we can get across as a Christmas message to everybody today.
Yeah.
You can be the change you wish to see in the world. In fact, you've already been, if you didn't know this until now, you've been creating every part of your experience. Nobody else. There's no them, there's no they. It's only reflections and projections of what's inside of you. It's the darkness that you've projected because you have not accepted it within you that causes you to have all the experiences that you do. The moment you can start to realize that you are empowered over it and you're a co-creator of it is when you can start doing something about it. It's the awareness. That's why in every 12-step program, the first thing you got to overcome is denial. So now you've had a wake-up call. It's time for you to realize your empowerment. And don't be afraid of your superpower.
Yes.
Because that
Yes.
is the next challenge that you will face. You start realizing, wait, I'm afraid of living in a world where I'm empowered.
Mm-hmm. Your superpower comes within your core wound too. That's what, don't be afraid to go into that part of you, because that's where you're going to find those superpowers.
So 2025 is the year of your superpowers.
Yes, let's go. I'm ready for
We
it.
declare
So
it as
ready.
such exactly, and everyone this year is going to start finding out what their superpowers are, and
Mm,
everybody has them just like talents. So that's your job, to find your superpowers and embrace the areas where you have weakness.
mm,
Fall in love with the areas that you have weakness and recognize the universe is always going to have that. You're going to have some things that are going to be your superpowers, some things are going to be your weakness, and that's what makes you uniquely you. And why God, source creator, the one, universal one, wants you, because it needs you to perceive itself through
mm-hmm.
your eyes that it can't do without dividing itself. That's why you've been divided. That's why you've had the exact experience you've had. That's why you're listening to this conversation right now. And this is why now, going forward, you know, I am empowered. I am that I am. Don't spend your time focusing anymore on what you are not. Focus your time on integrating and realizing that you are all that is. Thank you, guys.
I love
Merry
that.
Christmas. Have a
Merry
wonderful,
Christmas.
wonderful week,
Oh,
and love and do acts of kindness today. That's another challenge. Go when you go shopping, whatever you're doing, find a moment for no reason at all to
mm,
just be kind to somebody
mm-hmm.
with no expectation in return of what you would get back, and watch the magic that happens when you do it.
Also, something I want to throw down too, if you guys want to try this, is go to a drive-through if you're somewhere that has like a drive-through, and maybe getting the person behind you's coffee. And then not waiting for them to say thank you, or this, I do this sometimes. I'm like, oh, I feel like you're going, and I don't want them to know I did it. I just want them to feel what it's like to be gifted by a stranger. And then I tell the person at the window, just tell them to pass it forward. And so if you're listening and that resonates for you and you're like, ooh, I want to try that, or in your own way, whatever that looks like, just an act of kindness, not needing them to see that you did it, any validation behind it, just doing it from the goodness of your heart and just letting them know to pass that forward, I think is a really beautiful thing to add into this holiday
The
season as
key
well.
with all of these things is just to do it with gratitude in your heart and with no expectation of getting something in return.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just do it for the act of doing it, and treat it as an act of self-love, because these people are not separate from you. They are you. They're projection. Every
Mm,
person you meet, every circumstance you encounter, every experience that you have can be divine, miracle oriented experiences and synchronicity if you allow yourself to see it as such. Merry Christmas, everyone. Have a wonderful week, and love, sending love to all of you. Thank you so much, Michelle. Great
yes,
to be
thank
here with
you.
you.
Thank you, you guys. Yeah, and come check out our Conscious Convos and Donuts conversation. I put it in the our link as well, so you guys can see that.
Awesome. All right. Bye,
Beautiful.
guys.
Thank you, Robert.
Bye-bye.
Sending you love. Bye.